Hello and welcome back to Let the Rest Burn. I'm Colleen Nelson and I will be your host today. We are coming live from Podfest in Orlando, Florida. And if I could even describe this week in a nutshell, I haven't even gone to Podfest yet, by the way. I've literally just had a weekend in Sedona at a business conference and then a couple of days in Universal with my mother and my amazing tech guru goddess, Liesel, and my friend Alex, who's done copy editing for me before. It has been so incredibly transformative. I don't even know how to describe what I've been through yet because I still have to integrate it all. But I will say this, it involved a change of my entire business name and kind of a recalibration and re-ownership of who I am and what I'm here to do. And it is absolutely perfectly timed for this podcast because today I'm going to be talking about the ultra independent. And I'm really excited about this month. The ultra independent is a shadow archetype I know very dearly and one that gets activated in me quite often. And for the women that I typically work with, high level entrepreneurs, this is kind of how they've gotten through. This is how they've gotten their success. This is how they've survived life. This is why they are who they are. And so to integrate and heal this piece of ourselves is absolutely crucial to feel fulfilled in the life that we've created. So I'm very excited to talk to you all today. It has been a whirlwind. And if you don't follow me on Instagram, definitely pop over there. I'll explain all of this more in detail. It's the Evolved Therapist. And this is, I'm basically rebranding my whole business. I am still who I am. I haven't changed, right? But I'm changing how I tell you all what it is that I do. So before I dive into the ultra independent, I do want to talk about what it means to accept and receive feedback as somebody who's used to doing it all alone, right? So the independent is somebody who believes that they inherently can only trust themselves and cannot trust anybody else with their most vulnerable things, resources, thoughts, beliefs, feelings. And the ultra independent has had that reinforced throughout their life over and over and over and over again when people let them down. And so they do life alone, like a lot. And it is reinforced by our culture and our society that this independence is celebrated, but it's to a degree that they feel like an ache within themselves of loneliness because nobody quite sees them, right? They don't let anybody all the way in. And they don't access vulnerability when they're communicating with people. There is a phrase that I say often, right? I am transparent, but I am not vulnerable. Transparency is, I'm going to share anything with you, right? Like I can tell you my deepest, darkest shit, but I am not going to be vulnerable. I'm not going to let you into my emotional space, my emotional body as I share these things. I'm not going to let you affect me. That is like cutting connection off at the root, right? I'm cutting off the ability to have a feeling of belonging. Humans crave two things. Our two greatest needs are to be self-expressed and to belong. More often than not, we will abandon self-expression in order to belong. The ultra-independent does this really skewed thing where she believes that she's abandoning belonging in order to be self-expressed, but actually she's abandoning her full self-expression in order to belong only to herself, to be part of a tribe of people who say, I don't need anybody, I'm alone, I've got this. That is a sense of belonging, this kind of rebel with an attitude type of person versus, hey, I can be independent and vulnerable and tender and, open to be supported by and influenced by and taken care of by other people. Very interesting dynamic. And so I want you to think about how you receive feedback. The ultra independent will receive it but won't integrate it. Oh, thank you for telling me that. Okay, that's great. And then they move on because they think they know better. The ultra independent comes from a place of woundedness. So, since the wounded child is our core piece of the shadow archetype, we discover early on in childhood that those moments where we are risking, where we are being vulnerable, where we are sharing something tender, what happened when we did that is our caregivers or the adults in our world either ignored us, were indifferent, attacked us for that share, or legitimately told us in that moment that that was not an acceptable behavior and to not do it. And enough iterations of that and enough repetitive experiences of that, and you will adapt. You will shift. You will put yourself into a position where you will no longer have those character traits. In fact, you will do everything you possibly can not to. Oftentimes the ultra independent does things alone that they never actually have to do alone, right? Like they will refuse help even in the most obvious circumstances. And it's like I said, it's a badge of honor. They're like, I did that alone. Whereas like you didn't need to or have to. And in fact, like the toll that that took on your mental and emotional and physical body was not worth it. But they felt safe, right? Because to let somebody help them also means that they're letting somebody possibly in to let them down. It's extremely vulnerable to admit that you need help and support. It's extremely difficult to recognize that this is a powerful, powerful part of being human. We are communal beings. We are meant to work in community, to share, to delegate, to not take it all on. I want you all to think, how many of you are overwhelmed, exhausted, and burned out taking on all the tasks, the responsibilities that it's on your plate? I'm going to bet like 90% of you are like, hell yes, Colleen, that's me, that's me, that's me. This is such a difficult, difficult thing to let go of because it does make you exposed. And I say that with quotations, right? It makes you exposed because if somebody lets you down, then it's back on your plate. And this is where discretion comes in. This is where our boundaries come in. This is where a healthy conversation of what works, what doesn't work, the delegation of tasks come in. This is where we have to come together and say, okay, I'm going to trust this person. And if they let me down, that's okay. Because I know I can handle it and I'm going to try again. Y'all, this is the toughest thing in the world to do. It really is. If you have survived in your life as an ultra independent, this is like reworking how you exist in the world. But I'm telling you, this is the path to freedom and peace. This is how we find fulfillment and love and depth and joy. There is no joy if you are burned out and exhausted. There's only doing and work and surviving. You are not thriving in that space. So I want to talk about my ultra independent today. This is, the week of the self. And I think it's only appropriate that I talk about this last week and what's happened and how it's evolved for me and how I had to really, truly release the ultra independent. Like I came face to face with her this weekend and I'm still wrestling with her a little bit. We're still kind of finding our way together, but this is extremely perfectly timed. Of course it is. Okay, so I went into the weekend in Sedona. Kiara, she's the bold self is what she is. She's lifestyle and, business coach. She's a rebel herself and she's done life differently and she helps women who are doing life differently really figure out a path to do that. And she's a brilliant businesswoman. So she also helps women in business understand the mechanisms and the strategy behind it. Either way, I'm going into this weekend in Sedona having I've established a good, right? I was the next level therapist. I was, talking about these shadow archetypes. I was kind of stepping into the arena of immersions and retreats. And I just was playing in these different spaces in my world. But I didn't have a clear client path, right? So if you come into my world, what is it that you really are learning and growing? What kind of community are you in? What does it mean to be in my world, right? So I had this identity of Colleen Nelson, you know, licensed professional counselor, certified in EMDR, this professional woman here to change people's lives as a therapist. And that part of me was starting to outgrow her box I had placed her in, right? So I'm able to be extremely independent as that person. I am the ultra independent. I need no one. I have all the credentials. I have everything I need in that space to be um, my best self. But I was noticing, and I have been noticing for a while, and if you've been following me for a while, then you've seen me do this. I've been stretching beyond the limitations of the clinical therapist. I don't typically have a lot of one-on-one clients. I work with a handful of people at a time, and I don't usually do just weekly sessions, right? I provide a very different approach. And so in order to do so, I had to step out of the licensed professional counselor role and into mentorship. And I couldn't figure out how to navigate this and how to define myself and what to say and how I wanted to say it. Because I don't want to stop doing therapy, but I no longer want to do it in a clinical way that is under a licensing board, um, that insurance can use and things like that. Because what I'm looking at is much more of like a coaching mentorship relationship with someone. So I needed to clearly delineate the difference between here I am as a licensed therapist versus here I am as a mentor who has been trained as a therapist and has an expertise in trauma. So I go into this weekend and I'm like, I know my shit. I got this. No big deal. And I walk into a room full of incredible authors and these women who are leading revolutions and changing lives. And I didn't know how to describe what it is that I do and how I do it. I was, I was truly like lost for words. And the ultra independent all of a sudden found herself in a position where I needed a lot of support and a lot of help. And it was extremely vulnerable for me to admit that I really didn't know who I was. I didn't know how to describe what I'm doing. And in fact, my client journey is quite confusing. I've, I don't know if y'all have been following me, but I've gone from like divorce recovery coach to um, business coach to trauma therapist to, I mean, all over the place. And it's because I can't quantify what is I'm doing, right? I'm doing something extremely different that has not really been done. And that is almost calling out the therapy world in a way that is a little uncomfortable for me. And I'm also calling out the coaching world. I'm kind of calling out both and saying, hey, there's a different path here. We don't have to do one or the other. We can do something, hybrid in the middle. So I got called out on that, and I had to face my inner world. I had to face who I actually am and what I want to do. And it has been really hard because I don't think I can answer that question alone. I think I need support in finding those answers and figuring out what it actually means to do what I do. And I felt frustrated and angry and defensive and the shadow she really showed up. She was like, I don't need any of these people. Like, I'll just do it myself. I'll do whatever I want. They're all wrong. This is ridiculous. And, all those stories that you spit around in your head. But in reality, the truth was I do need to be more clear. I need to fully step in and own who the fuck I am. And so here we are. The evolved therapist is somebody who wants to do therapy different, right? I'm not leaving the identity of a therapist. I'm inherently that woman. I'm here to help you process deep, real shit. I am trauma trained. I can hold space for you to process trauma. I still have EMDR as a tool that I utilize. Somatic experiencing, containment, resolution. These are all interventions and tools that are therapeutic, right? And I want to do this differently. I want to see you weekly, yes, but I also want to walk with you side by side. Telegram, Voxer, there's these apps that you can, leave voice messages for each other and talk back and forth. And that is such a powerful component of who I am. I want to have a beautiful package with somebody where I'm with them for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and we are all in. I am talking to them every day in Voxer. We are having our weekly deep dive sessions. We are doing life together. And on top of that, they're invited into a community space with me, into a mastermind of other women who are walking along this path with me, who are healing themselves, who are clearing trauma, who are changing the world, who are leading revolutions, who are just trying to get their feet back on the ground. But these women who are devoted to the work, so they aren't doing therapy alone. Therapy is such a lonely process. So to have a community that you can come together and talk about this with is so profoundly healing. So on one hand, I have this comprehensive package where you get access to me far more than you would if I was a licensed professional counselor and we're meeting once a week, clear boundaries there. This one is more of an expanded mentorship. On top of that, I'm extremely passionate about immersions and in-person experiences. There's something very powerful about retreats. You come in and it shifts everything. Biologically, neurobiologically, energetically, cognitively. I mean, when you step out of your life and into a space that's carefully cultivated for you to transform, exponential. It's not a standalone, right? You can't do it just on its own. You have to have integration. You have to do the work. It takes time to dig into these things. It's not a quick fix, but it is a powerful clearing. It's a powerful statement to your body, to your mind, to what you want to do. So leading retreats and offering one-on-one immersions for people are my passion, my desire. I've always wanted to kind of stand as a revolutionary person and say, you know what, therapy can look different. So as the evolved therapist, I am doing it differently. So this is shifting me out of Colleen Nelson, master's degree, licensed professional counselor, EMDR, into my much more intimate name, the one that my best friends call me, which is Coco Nelson, the evolved therapist. And as Coco, it's me being more myself, more authentically true to who I am, and stepping out of this professional box that really kept me from helping people the way that I wanted to. Didn't matter what system I was in. I worked in detox, I worked at an eating disorder hospital, I worked in adoption. I felt constrained by the regulations that were on there. They were put there to keep us safe, very intentional, I understand. But for people that are really committed to doing the work, and especially entrepreneurs that are in this, having somebody that can do life with them and can understand the depth of this work and can clear trauma from their body while at the same time they're expanding is the unicorn. And so full ownership of this has been me stepping into my identity of, yeah, guys, I am different than a coach. I am different than a therapist. I am this revolutionary concept of being both. And even though I am not operating under my license, outside of the state of Colorado, and the offers that I have are on mentorship level, that doesn't mean that I don't have the training of a therapist that's backing me up in that arena. So it's a new concept. And the only way I got there, y'all, is to receive feedback, is to be open to the risk and the scary possibility that these people might be right and that I can't do this alone and that I don't need to. I need a team. I need people that are around me, keeping me supported and allowing me to do this work in a way that is different and a little scary for people and definitely challenging. This will trigger many therapists I know, and this will trigger many coaches I know. This is a very different evolution of self, and yet it's the truth. It doesn't make a therapist less than, it doesn't make a coach less than, it just makes me a unique option for the person that wants to do therapy differently, that wants to have a coach that has the depth and the training of a therapist. And so I'm claiming that. I'm claiming this on the podcast. I'm claiming it on Instagram. And I'm truly ready for what it is, what that means, and to invite people into this community and into this, let's do life together. So I want to end this podcast with these final words. I'm enrolling for my women's retreat in Greece. And we've got some spots open. And this is my call to you. If you want to do this work, to deepen, to transform, to release, come join us. We're doing a 90-day reset before the retreat where we have these beautiful conversations for 12 weeks before we leave. We deepen into this work, we clear shit out, we walk alongside our sisters, and then we get to celebrate with a 7-day all-inclusive retreat in Greece in June. I mean, there isn't anything that I can imagine that is more perfect for what it means to truly transform and to feel like you get a second start. And so if this is something that's like speaking, you're like, yes, I want this. I have payment plans. This is a very affordable retreat. It's probably the last time I'll run it at these prices. This is something that I want only the people that scream hell yes inside of their body to join. Because when I tell you I'm going to call you into transformation, I mean it. Will change your life. You will look back on this moment and say, this is when everything shifted. So if this is calling to you, DM me on Instagram. I need to have a conversation with you before you can join. I'm at the Evolved Therapist. And let's chat. Let's find out if this is the right fit for you, because starting in March, we begin our 90 days. And this is going to change everything. So, my dears, thank you for walking along this journey with me. I can't wait to continue to talk about the ultra independent. Next week, we dig into how the ultra independent affects our body, our pleasure, our ability to access pleasure, our ability to love our body, feed ourselves well, and the struggle it takes when we're burned out and overwhelmed. So walk with me next week into that arena. And until then, please go ahead and share this podcast. Please let me know if this resonated with you. Send me a DM. I read all of them. I respond to all of them personally, and I want to hear from you. So share, subscribe, and DM me if this was meaningful to you. Until next week. Bye-bye.